So they would feed you whatever you wanted. And so every night at Playboy, I'm having crab and lobster. And the room manager comes up and he goes, I don't even try the lobster. And I go, you should. It's delicious. I have good ideas. First thing I would do if I became president of our country, I would set up idiot zones in it. Because there are way too many people in this nation who think a thesaurus is the thing they saw in Jurassic Park. And the following people will report to the idiot zones. Anyone who can identify more than 3 professional wrestlers. Excluding, of course, the former governor of Minnesota. Anyone who leaves their turnsickles on for 35 freaking miles. Or anyone who bought season tickets to see the Cubs.
Hi, I'm Tim Slagle, and welcome to the Idiot Zone. you are watching Stand Up, Sit Down. That was the very funny Ken Sevara, and he's with me on the show today. Welcome,
buddy.
Ken.
You know, it is so good to see you again. It's been a while. I mean, we went through COVID and we didn't see each other, but right before COVID, we got together for a nice dinner.
Yeah,
which I was late.
Of course.
Oh, yeah. But that was a lot of fun. And now we're back together.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen you, even though the lockdown's over. I have not seen you because the Sox are doing well.
Yes. Yeah. And we cling to these times really hard. You know what I'm saying? Because we know it's not exactly collecting a lot of hardware in the process.
Yeah. It's kind of like old people telling kids, enjoy your youth because it goes by so quick. Well, you've been there so many times.
Oh, man, I've got scars. You want to see them? Here's 2000, here's 83, here's 93. Finally, in 2005, we get the promised land, you know. And I was actually at Game 2 when Paul Konerko hit the grand slam and Scott Podsednik hit the home run to end it. I will never forget that. It's like Moses. I don't want to hear any crap out of Moses. You know, it only took him 40 years to get to the promised land. It took the White Sox 88. So, you know, so you know, but it was such an incredible game, and it was such an experience that it was worth all of the pain to get to that very moment. You know,
So, well, yeah, and when the Jews got to the promised land, it was milk and honey.
Well, we had hot dogs. You know, it was fun. It was good. You know, so but it was that you can't explain. Going through being a baseball fan, and Cub fans would certainly understand this, and both teams happen to be in Chicago for, you know, at that point for the longest wait. But when you finally hit it, and that game was just absolutely off the charts for excitement, and being there and sharing in that, and being there with my cousin, and 2 long-suffering White Sox fans, to have experienced that in 2005 was amazing.
You were talking earlier before we started rolling that about the most memorable experience that even was probably could rival that. Mm-hmm. It was a show you did.
I've done several shows that would come under the classification of the most memorable. One was working with Bill Murray. We worked at the Merrill Ruskin Theater with him. And to have seen the expression on his face as I was on stage doing Harry Caray, and of course, Bill's the ultimate Cub fan. And as I came off the stage, I said, geez, thanks for having me on the show. And he grabbed my wrist and he said, are you kidding me? You just had an unbelievable set out there. But anything you've heard about Bill Murray on the good side, multiply it times 10. He's that great a guy. Huh. And I mean, it was just a great experience. Met Chevy Chase. met.
Boy, you bleeped over that pretty quick.
No, actually,
Bill Murray, the greatest guy in history. Yeah, I met Chevy Chase, but I also met.
No, he was also a nice guy. And Tim Meadows is just a. You know how this is.
I know. I know Tim.
Wonderful.
I live
person.
next door to. I lived next door to Tim Meadows, above Jeff Garland.
You got to be kidding me!
For a
I
couple
never knew
years.
that about you.
Yep, on Wells Street.
A wonderful guy.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
wonderful class guy, and he was there with his family, and he was telling. He wanted to show his family Second City, where he had worked out, and then all of Chicago, and we had a really nice chance to talk, and a real pleasant experience, And then what was the show I was talking about a few minutes ago?
You were talking about the one in the Field of Dreams, that you worked the Field of Dreams.
I had a dream gig being a baseball fan. I had a chance to interview about 12 or 13 Hall of Fame players, and it included Ricky Henderson, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench. And I've got a great story about this. Frank Thomas, who I spent the entire afternoon with.
Pick the names up off the floor.
Okay.
Get to the story.
Okay, so now Pete Rose comes in.
There's another one.
Okay, but Pete Rose comes in, and every other word. I mean, he is F-bombing everything. Everything. I was out at this. Bleeping this and that. Okay.
Should have saved this for the extra segment.
Probably. But it's so there's this little kid in the front row, and the crowd is going ballistic. They're laughing so hard. And Pete goes, "Well, there's no kids here." And I looked at him and I go, "You missed one." And he goes, "I thought he was a bleeping midget." and the place goes ballistic again. I mean, it was a for a baseball fan. It was I will never be able to duplicate that.
That is amazing. Here's a question I ask everybody that comes on: how do you write?
The funniest thing about it is primarily on stage, and especially with small crowds. Because a lot of people see a small crowd and they freak out and they go, I don't want to work for these people. And there's maybe 5 people in the crowd that night and they go, I don't want to work for them.
5 people in the crowd.
In the crowd. Right. No, exactly.
That's a dinner party. That's not a crowd.
That's what it is,
Yeah, I got it.
So, if those 5 people were in your house, you'd be having a great time with them, telling them stories and stuff like that. And that's the way I always looked at small crowds. So instead of saying, well, I'm not going to feel like doing it, there's that great story about Red Fox, and he's playing a hotel in Vegas.
Let's save that for the final segment.
Okay,
we'll save that for the extra segment.
But it's not dirty.
Well, yeah, it is. So you can still say, yeah. So you can. We'll tease that. We'll tease that segment.
Sounds good. All right. But I think you can't punish the people that show up.
Right.
And so I always
they're the good ones.
They're the good ones. They came, and so I always looked at a small audience as an opportunity, and instead of something that you would say. I'd much rather work for 300 people. The best stuff comes out of those small shows sometimes because you're being conversational with them.
Right.
And now all of a sudden somebody will say something, oh my God, I never thought of that before, And so I've picked up a lot of material doing those late night shows, the third show at Zany's on a Saturday night where you're going to forget half of what you said anyway. But those shows were never, to me, bad shows. They were always opportunities,
Huh. That's interesting. You have you have a pretty long career. You were actually doing comedy before the boom.
We were doing comedy before there was.
I disagree. There was comedy in vaudeville. So you're not that old.
No, I'm not that old. But when we started, basically we started with Tom Dreesen. And
I should probably go back for
Sure.
people that don't know you. You did something that does not exist anymore. You were a comedy team,
and you are so right, because the economics of the situation today will not allow most clubs to pick up, 2 airfares, 2 hotel rooms, and then plus the other acts on the show. So we started in a comedy team, the comedy team of O'Brien and Sevara. I used to sit in the bleachers of Marian Catholic High School and do impressions of all the teachers, and then I would do other voices.
Can you still do them?
Yeah, we had a coach named Coach Don Berg, and the coach never knew the difference between singular and plural. So one kid would walk down the hall, and he'd go, "Hi, Coach," and he'd go, "Hi, boys." You're looking around. Where's the other guy? But I used to put together bits because I was basically bored in this school, and they weren't feeding me enough intellectually. So I had to find another way. And so the guy who was to be my partner, Jim O'Brien, used to watch me gathering these big crowds in the morning, and he goes, "Hey, I can do that." And so he went home for a summer, and he got a bunch of voices and impressions together. And then he came back and started doing talent shows and this and that. I was a musician. I was in a really good rock and roll band. We were making money as kids. And so I wanted to pursue music. He wanted to pursue comedy. One Saturday night at 10 o'clock, he came to my house, and he goes, "Look, we've been entertaining all these people. Why don't we put some material together and just see how it goes?" And we did, and we were so bad. I mean, it wasn't.
We'll find out how bad you were.
Will. Yes, you will.
On the next segment of Stand Up, Sit Down.
Hey, we have another great show for you. The show is Fly By Night. I am Ken Sevara, and Chicago has always been a great comedy town. And over the past 4 decades, we have had many great rooms. And here are just a few. And you guys may recognize some of these names. We've had the Comedy Woman Lions, the Comedy Cottage in Rosemont, the Funny Firm on Ohio Street in Chicago, the First Improv, which is only a block away from that, Catch a Rising Star at the Hyatt Regency, the Funny Bones, and countless one-nighters.
Ken Sevara on his show Fly By Night, his radio show. This is Stand Up, Sit Down. I am Tim Slagle, and we're back with Ken. And you were talking before we saw you list all those clubs, which I think when Larry was on here, we talked about how many of those clubs were. You worked all those?
Yeah, all of them. Every one of them.
With O'Brien, or were you a solo by then?
Both. I, on the advice of Brenda Carlin, George Carlin's wife, when we broke up.
Oh wait, there's another one.
I know, but Brenda played a real important. I would have never met my wife had it not been for Brenda Carlin, because
and I still
no, and But George Carlin was partners with Jack Burns, Burns and Carlin, and this was in the 60s. And when I broke up with my team, it ended very abruptly. And it was like, oh my God, we were doing very well out in LA, and now all of a sudden, Tim, it was over, and I'm left picking my teeth off the floor, basically, and had to start over. Well, she called me and she said, "Listen, Kenny, when George broke up with Jack Burns, he went back to New York where he was comfortable." She said, "Don't be breaking in a new act out here." She said, "Because if you do, they say they won't hold the first impression of seeing you, but they're gonna." She said, "So go back to where you're very comfortable, redo your act, and then if you feel good about coming back, then come back that way, established." But she said, "Don't be messing with an act that isn't completely tight yet. It'll be your downfall." And so I thought that was great advice. And so when I got back here, I started working like crazy overtime. And then I would go back to LA periodically, and all my friends out there would be complaining that they weren't working, that their agent wasn't doing this for them. And a friend of mine threw an engagement party for my wife, Lori, and I. And the party was going great until the subject of show business came up. And then the venom just blew out of everybody. And I swear to God, we left our own party to take a walk around the block because I go, my God, if this is it, I'll stay where I am because I'm working and I'm doing everything I want to do, and I was having fun. I was enjoying it, and so I go, yeah, I'll just do that. I'll stay here for a while. It was the best thing I think I ever did.
So when you were out in L.A., you had a manager when you were with O'Brien, correct?
Yes, we did.
I'll let you drop one more.
Oh, no. I mean, it's not like, Rollins and Jaffe or anybody. We had a guy named Jack Mondras. He handled Willie Tyler and Lester, the ventriloquist. Jack did a nice job for us, but, with a lot of management and with a lot of agents, you get the feeling that they've taken you as far as they can go,
Right.
and now you're existing in a cul-de-sac. And so, we went out, and I felt at the time, just before we broke up, that we were done with him. It was over. And then he handed us a contract that was like a phone book, and I go, I'm not signing that. We're indentured servants.
I don't even want to read that.
I don't even want to read it. You'd have to hire a lawyer and go. I did take it to a lawyer, and he said, "Look," he said,
he looked at how thick it was, and he goes, that's about $5,000 thick.
He was an Italian lawyer, and he did it pro bono for me,
wow.
which was really nice. But he said,
"But you owed him a favor."
I did. I did, and he's still calling me. But basically, had we signed that, we were indentured servants for the rest of our life.
Right.
And I told my partner who wanted to sign with him, I said, I can't sign this. I'm sorry. He goes, well, if you don't, I'm breaking up with you. I said, do what you have to do. And the team broke up, and then it was starting over. And what I was...
Didn't you have a manager before that, though?
We had a guy named Murray Becker.
Yeah, but wasn't Tom your...
Well, Dreesen was our first manager.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes.
That was the name I wanted you to drop.
Yeah. Tom is, to this day, we meet every Saturday night on Zoom.
Oh, wow.
And a dear friend.
Super guy. Friend
God.
of the industry like no other. He loves comedy. He loves comics.
And I love him. And we broke into his dressing room with two 18-year-old kids. We're still living with our parents. Okay.
I thought that story was going somewhere else.
Oh, no.
We broke into his dressing room and two 18-year-old kids were...
No. So
save that for the final segment.
The final segment. I'm learning. So the bottom line is we were wet behind the ears. We were naive kids, but there was an element of street smart in there. So we fast talked our way past the guard. Tom was in the comedy team of Tim and Tom with Tim Reed, who was Venus Flytrap on WKRP in Cincinnati. Great actor, great guy. Broke into they came off the stage, and we're sitting there. We're wearing tuxedos. We looked like a Bad Love Boat episode. Okay, I mean it was just. But we were street smart. There was some weird element in there, and it was. So you had to be able to delineate with us, what good things were in there and what crazy things were in there. But we're kids and we had to learn, but we had a lot of drive. They came off the stage. We're in their dressing room. My partner blurts out, "We're a team," and they're looking at us like, "Where'd you get those tuxes?" But he was so blown away by that he said, "I had to manage you." And he taught us...
The first thing he taught you is don't ever do that again.
Take those tuxes off now. They're horrible. But he saw the desire, and he managed us. He got us into Mr. Kelly's, which was an iconic club in Chicago.
Oh, man. Lenny Bruce.
Phyllis
Diller,
Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Barbra
Streisand.
Yes, exactly. He recorded the Moose Bit, Woody Allen, at Kelly's. I believe.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Wow.
And so...
Now Gibson Steakhouse, I believe.
Exactly right. And so we were learning. Here's these two 18-year-old kids. We were learning in a highly professional environment. And it worked. And so first we had done the college circuit before we went to Kelly's, and then we worked Playboy. We were the second youngest act in the history of Playboy to work their clubs.
Probably for good reason.
Oh, yeah.
You put 18-year-old boys in the Playboy Club.
There was testosterone everywhere, you know.
Pull down that cummerbund, you're showing again.
And the buddies would say to us, Tim, they'd go, you kids can't be back here without your parents. And we go, you don't understand. We're your headliners this evening, you know. And so we were allowed to learn in this great environment. In those days, you had a limousine taking you to all of your promotional appointments. You had a real dressing room. You had people chauffeuring you everywhere for anything you needed to do. And I'll tell you a great story. So they would feed you whatever you wanted. And so every night at Playboy, I'm having crab and lobster. And the room manager comes up and he goes, I don't even try the lobster. And I go, you should. It's delicious. And that didn't go over well. That was a mistake, as I learned, you know. But we were babies, and we started in this business. And I started to tell you about how bad we were when we first started out. We're at Boston Playboy, and they had you do 5 shows a night. So downstairs, upstairs, downstairs, upstairs, downstairs. And they were 20-minute sets. So by the end of the night, you were tired. We had a bad night. I mean, this is real bad, okay? At the end of the night, this woman comes out of the club with her daughter, and she goes, that singer was great, but those comics were awful. And her daughter goes, Mom, that's them down there. And you think she would have pulled back? She goes, I don't care. They were terrible. And our ego's just done, you know. And those are the nights when you're first starting out. As we both know, you're starting out, and it's hard. It's hard being up there and putting an act together. And then...
You mean that's not supposed to happen anymore after you start out?
No, exactly. And your ego's already deflated from a difficult night, and then somebody comes and they put the bull, you know, the sword in the bull, and so they have to make it so much better, you know. Salt in the wounds. So, and you have to, as you know, we had to go through so many of those nights until you get to be a polished performer.
That's great. And thank you, Ken, for coming in to Stand Up, Sit Down.
Hey, buddy, it's wonderful to see you.
Always a pleasure to hang with you. We've got one more segment coming up. If you're watching on the internets, and we're going to tell that Red Fox story.
Oh, yes, we are.
You might want to tune in for that. Otherwise, if you're watching over the air, thank you very much for tuning in to Stand Up, Sit Down. I'll be here every week with more comics. Good night, everybody.
We all remember Harry Caray, right, you guys? Yeah. And we miss Harry, too, don't we? Yeah. You gotta love Harry. You gotta love anybody who can outdrink Charlie Sheen. I was telling Harry was one Bud Light over, too. It was usually the first inning. Because he'd be saying things like, yo, Steve! Holy cow, am I hammered! Hey, we have a score just in from Oakland. It's Baltimore 3, Cincinnati 1. He's hammered. We don't even have interleague play yet. Glasses too, my God, they just kept growing. You saw little hair, like Harry was staring through a friggin' aquarium. I could look at a road map and seen people waving at him.
That was not Harry Caray, and neither am I. That was comic Ken Sevara. You're watching Stand Up, Sit Down, the podcast episode segment. Ken is with me right here.
Buddy, so this is the segment where we can let it all go, right?
Yeah, we just let it out.
I thought on the night that Harry Caray died that it was finished. It was the Von Meter John Kennedy.
Right. This is a podcast, so nobody even remembers John F. Kennedy versus Von Meter. Tell the story. What happened?
Von Meter was a great Kennedy impersonator. Just owned it. Came out with an album called First Family, and on the day that Kennedy was assassinated, he was in a limousine, and he goes, "Turn the car around. It's over." And so his career, and I had the same feeling the night that Harry died. I was listening to the radio, and I had a gig that night, and I go, "My God, what am I going to do? The guy's dead. Everybody's going to know it." And I did it as a tribute to him. And I thought at that time, the impression's over, it's done. And 14 years later, I'm on stage and people are going, "Do Harry, hey, do Harry." And so, as a comedian, as a creative person, you want to, sometimes you want to put that stuff behind you. You go, "Come on, I'm still doing Harry Carey."
It's like Gallagher's Watermelon.
Exactly. No, exactly. And so, you're going, well, gee, people are going to think I haven't, done anything. But they kept asking and asking. And to this day, they're still asking me to do that bit. And I just think it's incredible. The guys like Elvis, he's had that kind of longevity. And people still, even if they don't know who Harry Carey is, I tried to write the bit so if I'm out of town, they get the gist of this alcoholic announcer or this guy who drank a lot. I don't want to say alcoholic, but this guy who
But
drank.
you did.
But I did. And I'll be getting, letters from Dutchie now. But I always loved Harry, and I met him a couple times, and I loved him. And they say you only impersonate people you admire, and that was the case with him. I loved him. He wasn't a cookie counter dull announcer. He was bigger than life. And so as I did the impression, I tried to do a satire. I'm doing Harry dropping acid. "Holy cow, the scoreboard has lips. It's telling me the scores. Hey, the AstroTurf just ate Mark Grace. Steve, you have two heads. Why don't you sing a duet? Hey, looks like a double header." And things like that. So I was doing a satire on him, and Harry knew of me. And he was very complimentary on, I think it was Brandmeier's show or Kevin's show. He was very complimentary because I would always put the disclaimer in saying I wasn't Harry. There was another personality in town who was doing Harry, who was not putting this disclaimer in.
Yeah, he was being mean.
He was being real mean. And I was never mean with Harry. I just said, "Look, I'm doing a satire. Nobody believes Harry's going to actually drop acid in the booth. So
Right.
Let's all settle down now." And this was before the woke culture was shutting everything down. And but to this day, people still want that bit, which shocks me. But I still do it if they want it.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the Rolling Stones. It's your gimme shelter, so
That's
to speak.
exactly right. That's exactly what it is, Tim. Exactly to the T. And so if they want it, I'll do it. And older audiences appreciate that. And so I'll do it for them. If you're doing third show at Zany's in front of 20-year-old kids, they're not going to, they don't get it. They just, and so it's generational, and I understand that.
Sure.
And so I would prefer not to do it for the third show.
Well, Harry hasn't been here longer than most kids that come into Zany's second show Friday have been alive.
Right.
So
that's exactly. And there used to be a guy, God bless him, he was a wonderful person. His name was Ace Samarco. And I used to watch Ace, and he was very entertaining, but he was still doing Bela Lugosi impersonations, 50 years after the guy dropped dead. And so
I was doing Bela Lugosi, but I didn't know. I thought I was doing Count Dracula. I had no idea I was imitating Bela Lugosi. So,
but you're always, and I think comics, you have to do this is. You've got to be current. You got to keep doing the current stuff. I love your act because you're always on the cutting edge. I love you because I'll hear the branch cracking, and I go, "Slagle, pull back now," But I always love you because you have that sense of knowing when that branch is going to crack. And so you never
not as often as you would imagine.
Well, but I know you on WLS when we did the show with Jerry Agar. You would always have that innate sense to where you would go out and I'd hear the branch starting to crack, and then you pulled back just in time. And so I always appreciated that about you, and I always appreciate the fact that you've always been very current. You're always thinking. You're always doing new stuff, and it's all cutting edge stuff. I love that.
Thank you. And you love Harry so much that you did not even hold it against him when he left the Sox.
I know. No, you're right. You're right. Well, he knew, and he was having problems there, that they had a limited audience. That they only went to, he said, as long as we're on this segment, he said, I can see 300, or he said something to the fact that I can urinate on more homes.
I can piss.
Well, he actually said urinate.
Did he really?
Urinate. He said I can urinate on more homes out of my apartment at the Ambassador East than the White Sox, reach. And you have to remember, if you go back further in time, White Sox were on a UHF station following the bullfights. They actually, I mean, this sounds like you're making this up, and I'm not making up. And you have another Sox fan in the room with us, and I don't know if he remembers that, but it was at Channel 32 when they were UHF or 44, one of those. And the only way you could get the signal is if there was a tornado that day, and it carried the signal across the street. But these guys were following the bullfights, and I go, how much lower can we go?
Daddy, are we going to watch the ball game now? No, son, we've seen enough slaughter for the
day. Exactly.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left.
I got to
We've been teasing it. We've been teasing it all. So please tell us the Red Fox story.
So Red Fox is working a show late at night at one of the hotels. Let's just say it's the MGM, and it's 1:30 in the morning, and there's like 5 people out there, and you hear the announcer go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Red Fox," and they play Sanford's on womp 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 up, womp 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 womp, and he's walking out and he sees the mic and he goes, "I ain't working to 5 fucking people." Womp 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 up, womp 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 up, womp up, womp, da 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 da. And he walks off, and that's it. You're done. You're done. So I love that. I just love that story. And you'll never hear me use that word on stage, but it was so appropriate for this. It was great, man.
It's you brought up I don't want to tell that other story. So, and that's the thing. Coming up 5 people. It's when the comedy boom was happening. I mean, when you went from the Playboy circuit into the Chicago circuit, I mean, you were right there. You were ready when the wave hit.
We had been through enough professional environments that we were ready to step into Zanies. We were ready to step in. We did a national college circuit, and that helped us hone. You had to do 2 45-minute sets in a college. So that helped us hone that 90 minutes to really get tight. So that by the time the clubs opened, we were fitting that like a glove. And you'd be at the Maroon Raccoon in
Rosemont.
Thank you. In Rosemont, and there would
where
be
it's the Westin Hotel, I believe.
That's exactly right.
Is where it was.
That's exactly right. And now, I mean, you would have kids sitting on the floor around the stage, and you would also have people standing up, and they couldn't get enough comedy. You just couldn't get enough of it, and it was fantastic. And the boom hit, and then there were comedy clubs. 3 clubs in Tulsa, Oklahoma, full-time clubs. I'm going, well, when is it? And I'll remember a guy in L.A. said after the Comedy Magic Club opened, there was the Ice House, the Improv, the Comedy Store. Comedy Magic Club opens, guy goes, "I think this thing's peaked." And it wasn't even the beginning of the boom yet, And then it just exploded. And then we were working. They're flying you to your gigs. They're picking you up in a limousine. And the newer comics get so sick of hearing this because they've never known that. They've never known that kind of a business,
It's too bad. I wish they would.
So do I. I do as well.
And I wish we had more than 45 minutes.
Love you, buddy.
We're at
it has been it has been so good knowing you and all these years and the fun we've had together. and that $20 bill just keeps getting passed back and forth because we're so considerate of one another that if we drive somewhere, Tim pays for the gas one time, I pay for the gas next, and we have a $20 bill that's literally worn out. I'm not kidding, you guys. I would like to say I'm kidding on that, but I'm not. And it's so.
I think you got more stories. We'll probably have you back on.
I would love to be back on, buddy. It's always a privilege.
Thank you so much for watching. That's Stand Up, Sit Down for this evening. See you next week.